go now.
Okay, so here we go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a sunny and hot and dry summer night on Vashon. It is a perfect night to listen to a forum on the upcoming school board election. This panel is put together for you tonight by the Vashon Maury Community Council and hosted by the Voice of Vashon. We are here at the Voice of Vashon in the Gene Bosch studio, and you will be able to listen to this and catch it later online at voiceofvashon.org. If you are not listening live at KVSH 1019 FM right now, we do know that there is a great Vashon Maury Community Council meeting going on tonight. So if you want to catch two things at one time or one thing at two times, you can go ahead and catch this online. All right, I will get us going right away. My name is Amy Drayer. I am here first and foremost as a citizen of Vashon and a graduate of Vashon High School, class of 1995, and a citizen who is so excited about all the participation with the school board. But for context, I am also the director at the Chamber of Commerce and very sleepy because Strawberry Festival was just this past weekend, and we had a great time, but I am still catching up on my sleep. And want to go forward and just get this going because we have 1 hour and 4 candidates and a lot of questions. And I know that the community group that put this together absolutely made it available to the community to ask questions and submit questions. And I think there were over 30 questions when I looked to sort of pull everything together today. So what we're going to do is I condensed them down with help from the board that put the questions together into sort of some main topic areas and sort of amalgamated the questions into what we hope represents most of what the community was looking for. And I will leave it to the organizers and the candidates to follow up on all of the other great community questions that were submitted. So we will go through and we'll have a time for the candidates to introduce themselves, and then we will ask the questions, and each candidate will have a couple minutes to answer these questions, 2 minutes exactly, so we can keep on time, because it's easy when you're in your head and passionate about something to keep going, but I will do my best to keep us on time so we can get to everyone and get to all the issues that the community really cares about. And wasting no more time with introductions, let's go ahead and I'll go around and say who the folks are here. They are 4 folks who are running for position 3 for the Vashon Island School District School Board. And they are on your primary ballot, which you have right now and which is due by August 1st. You will want to get those in by August 1st. Don't forget to vote. We have Gator Lamphere. Hello. River Branch.
Hello.
Angela Marshall.
Hi.
And Martha Woodard.
Hi.
And rather than me be long-winded, what I'm going to do is start now and again be efficient with our time. So just a quick 1-minute introduction, who you are and why you're running, and don't be afraid. You will have plenty of time to keep expounding on all of the questions we have. So you don't have to fit it all into that 1 minute. We just want folks to know who you are. And we will go ahead and start with Gator. And I am going to go ahead and time us. So when you hear that chime, wrap it on up. Thanks. Go ahead, Gator.
Thank you. First of all, I do want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe, and it's our job to steward and care for these lands as we move forward. Hafa-day, my name's Gator. My pronouns are he, him. I would like to also say that residents of the island above citizenship, as there are many who may not be citizens. I am running for the student council, the school board, because there's been a lot of stuff that happened in the last couple of years, and it's time to make our school district safe, equitable, and inclusive, make people have a sense, help them have a sense of belonging here, and hold the board and other people in the school district accountable. There's been a lot of stuff that I know we're not going to talk about a lot of, but should be addressed. So that's where I am on that. I will defer the rest of my time.
Excellent. Thanks so much. All right, let's go ahead and Martha.
Hi, I'm Martha Woodard. For those of you who did not go to Vashon High School between '83 and 2016, I spent my adult career at Vashon High School as a teacher. and was very much involved with our local association for teachers, as well as Partners in Education. I'm also endorsed by the VEA Council and the National Women's Political Caucus. And those are just sort of the resume stuff. I just want to say I'm so happy to be here with very passionate and intelligent folks. And thank you, Council, VOV, and Amy.
All right. Let's go ahead and River. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. I also want to echo my thoughts, or my thanks for this opportunity to speak and to have this conversation, and to everyone who put this together. I have over 25 plus years in education, most recently as a tenured professor of film, but within that, enormous priorities that shaped that were my priorities in terms of inclusion, equity, and diversity in teaching media, and in launching one of the initiatives that I was founding, an organization, editmedia.org, Equity, Diversity, and Teaching Media. And so inclusion, safety, access, and opportunity have always driven my pedagogy and my work. And the other aspect I would pull out, because I feel like it's relevant to the board and the district at this time, was being appointed to a board overseeing roughly a $35 million budget at a time that really parallels some of the challenges facing the Vashon School District. And so with that budget, we were dealing with the same issues. And I will speak more to that in a minute. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. And go ahead, Angela.
Hi. So I'm so excited to be here with you guys. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Angela Marshall. I am a mother, and my children live here on Vashon. They are in the school district. I have one that just graduated out of Chautauqua and is moving on to middle school. So it's a pretty exciting time of development in our household and going off and exploring the town and independence, and it's very exciting. My other child is at Chautauqua for another year. And I've lived on the island for about 8 years. And in my professional world, I work at King County. I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Labor Relations. So we negotiate union contracts for all of our public stewards that work for the county. I was raised in a family of educators. My mom is a retired special needs teacher. My sister, a speech therapist in the school district in Renton, and a number of other educators and the rest of my family, grandparents, and so forth.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. And again, really, thank you for being here. It is amazing to see the engagement with the community and all of the folks, not just the four of you here, but everyone running for the school board. And so just, want to start with gratitude for everyone being engaged and involved. And it matters, and it means a lot. So the questions that we're going to ask here, I'm going to try and steer away from some of the ground that's been covered. In the Beachcomber, there's extensive coverage about all 9 of the candidates, but also recently, Elizabeth Shepard, our wonderful editor at the Beachcomber, did a great write-up on 4 of you specifically and some of your positions. And so I want to try to cover some new ground tonight with that, and really encourage folks who are listening or watching to check out that coverage in addition to the forum tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and start with a question that, is a little bit different, maybe does cover some new ground, and talks a little bit about your personal approach to being on a board. One of the big jobs of a school board is to effectively facilitate two-way communication, right, with staff, with parents, with student, with communities. It takes time, it takes know-how, and it takes a little bit of being a politic, right, to talk with folks and really gather meaningful information, right, from many different parts of the community. So how will you personally facilitate effective communication, two-way communication with the different stakeholders? And we will go ahead and we'll go backwards around, and we'll start with you, Angela. And I'm so sorry. Yeah. Just a 2-minute reminder. We're going to do 2 minutes per person. Yeah, thank you.
Great. So in addition to the school board meetings, where that is clearly a very effective community space for everybody to have open and honest and productive communication, I also think there's a lot of other opportunities for community involvement, whether they be events, community events, contact information, when emails and communication to and from the community. I think there's an opportunity to be responsive and just getting out there in the general public like we are today, or at some of our gathering events. I think that that's just general. I hope to have an open and honest communication. I think both at the meetings and out in the community space. But I would also add in my my general personality and in my professional experience, I have a lot of experience in having to speak to stakeholders and answer questions, hard questions, whether that be of the King County Council or of the general public who has a lot of issues, talking to media. Generally, I'm pretty well practiced at that kind of communication skill. And I do want to apply that to my local community and the things that I care about that serve us here on the island. It'll be a really exciting experience for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, and let's go ahead and jump over to River. Same question. Okay. Would you like, and if any point you want me to repeat the question after it's been a while that folks have chatted, happy to do so.
Okay, thank you. One of the pieces I would say is, as I mentioned before, I was appointed to a board that was responsible for many of the same things that this board is charged with. And core to that appointment, I believe, is my deep-seated commitment to represent the constituents that are served and serving this community. And so, first and foremost, I see it as my responsibility to serve the students, the families, the teachers, the staff, and the administrators. And in that role, I do see it as incumbent upon the board to reach out to and to be active within the community. And at this point in time, given what the school district is facing, I think an active presence with different constituents is critical. And so one of my hopes for the board might be something to the effect of each board member being assigned or choosing to work more actively and on a regular basis with different constituents within the community, and so that they are at meetings, so that someone doesn't have to come to a board meeting to find the board member, but that they know who the board member is, they feel that outreach, and they feel that presence, and they feel that presence shaping the outcome of decisions. So it's an ongoing dialogue, not a situation that has to reach a crisis point for the board to be aware of concerns. I think that we are deeply aware, and that we need to be deeply committed to being more active in our outreach as a community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And Martha.
Well, River, you really nailed it right there. It was a great answer you gave. I've given this a great deal of thought, having been, I suppose, on the ground floor of this job as a teacher, and then also meeting with the board to negotiate contracts, which I've done for 20 years or more, and also being in a particular teaching position where I taught all students from every walk of life and every ability. I'm luckily retired, and therefore I can put my true heart and soul into this. I can go to meetings anytime, anywhere. I can meet people anytime, anywhere. And if anybody knows how committed I am to this island, I'm committed to seeking out the constituents who do not come to school board meetings, whose voices are not heard because they're too busy or they feel like no one will listen to them. And that certainly includes the students. I am so encouraged by the fact that all four of us are student-driven. I'm encouraged by the entire focus of what we've been talking about and about what's been going on in discussions in community as to how we need to make some changes. And I want to be part of the solution.
Absolutely, absolutely. And same question to you, Gator. How would you personally facilitate effective two-way communication?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to the students, to the community, to the teachers, to the educators, to the paras, to the admin. And River, you brought up an idea of being available. I almost, like, before you wrote that down, or before you said, I was like, look, what if we just had office hours where I can sit out in the public and say, okay, I'm here, come ask questions, come engage. But the number one thing is I'm not going to talk at you. I'm going to listen. And I've also educated all sorts of people, and I've done all these things. I have training as an instructional designer, so I know how to educate K through corporate CEOs. I know how to train them. I know how to create training. But what I really want to know is, what do the students and the staff and the educators need to feel safe? It's not just the issue with the teachers. It's the bullying at McMurray. It's all these other issues that keep creeping up. There are a lot of problems in our schools, and we need to listen to what the kids are saying. We need to know what the teachers are saying, what their parents are saying. And so for 55 more seconds, I'll say, listen, 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 listen. I can talk. I talk for a living, but I can listen better than I can talk. And
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. There are times when innovation can solve problems, right? When looking at something in a new way or making more with less can solve problems, but not every time. How do you approach making tough choices, right? What is sort of a two-part question when you have a tough choice to make? What is your decision matrix when a tough choice comes along, when there is no innovating your way out, when there is no way to make more with less? What's your matrix? And how do you deal as a board with making a choice that you know will disappoint people within the community? And we will go ahead and start with you, River. How would you approach that?
I think this is an excellent question. One, as I said before, I see it as the board member's responsibility to represent the different constituents within our community. It's their responsibility as well to make those tough decisions. And I understand that that can put people in a very difficult place. As I referenced before, the board that I was on, in particular, I think I was there because it was in a similar precarious moment, and that people trusted me to make those decisions, regardless of that it wasn't about me, that it was about the students, it was about the educators, and that I was going to make the decision from that place. And so one of the guideposts for me is making sure that it is the decision I'm making is in the best interests of our educational community. The other is to fortify my knowledge base, to require the data, to require the research, and to do the outreach to get as much information as I can so that when I get to that decision point, I feel as well informed as possible, and that it's not incumbent upon solely someone else to hold that knowledge and for me to agree or disagree with it, that I am charged as a board member with becoming an expert in whatever decision we're making and seeking out the people who can best guide me in making that decision. And so I take that very seriously. When it comes to making that decision, as long as I am holding the best interest of our students and educators and families, then that's a decision I can make and I can stand behind. And that part is not difficult for me. And I want to know actually that we have a board willing to stand even when it is difficult, and even when it's amidst a great number of stressors within the community, because these are difficult decisions facing our board.
Absolutely, absolutely. Angela?
Yes. I think it's very often that when you're put in a position of representing a large group of people, or an organization, that you are going to have tough decisions, and those tough decisions are not always going to make everyone happy. I think it's impossible to make everyone happy. However, I think the way that I personally approach making decisions is, number one, is it backed behind integrity? How do you choose that? Choose whether you have made that decision based on integrity. Number one is, I think it's important to ask a lot of questions. Ask a lot of questions of yourself, of others, a lot of critique, which will then land you towards the most informed decision, but also understanding the impacts of your decision on various groups, and most importantly, the long run. So I think making decisions for the short term will likely land in a manner where you're not only going to make someone happy, but you're not going to be making the most solid decision for the long-term health and future of the district. So that's how I would apply my decision making, is a lot of thoughtful critique, questions of both the community, the employees at the district, those who really know the subject matter experts that I would rely on to reach a solid decision, and considering ultimately the long run, not always the easiest decision, but the one with most integrity.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll go to Martha.
Well, the board has been in this position many, many times in the past. Unfortunately, the way that we fund education in this state sets up every school board that doesn't have a huge funding base of property tax in that position all of the time. And I have seen boards come and go that were very good and thoughtful, and others that simply reacted to the loudest voices. I've seen programs that were started because of the loudest voices and were not based on the sort of best practice for the good of the whole. So I think Angela said it beautifully in the fact that you have to figure out what your policy and fiscal decisions are going to do for the curriculum, for the long term. How does it affect the classroom? How does it affect the groundskeepers, the staff all the way down the line? What are the expectations of the majority of our parents in the island? And it's a very hard job. As president of VEA, I often was forced to make decisions that certainly did not benefit everybody, but I always tried to weigh those for the most needs of the people that I was representing. And I would do that today if I was on the board. And I would also try to suspend any of my sort of personal prejudices on what I think is better than something else, and truly listen. That's what I would do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Gator.
I would, thanks. I would start with, you asked about the matrix. I am a knee-jerk reaction guy, but I don't follow through all the time. So I would have that immediate, well, this is how we should do it. And then I would write that down and set it aside. You know, you write that letter to your boss telling him you're quitting, but you never send it. So there's that to start. And then I'm going to try to center the most impacted. I'm going to look at it through an equity lens, a safety lens. I'm going to look at it through a diversity lens, an inclusion lens. And I'm going to look at that and then look at the data, look at the information, and try to find, to try to find to make an informed opinion on the decision that needs to be made. It is a school board. I am not blankets. I get to make the decision for everyone. So I'm going to make sure that I have the informed decision that I would choose. And then I'm going to hear the opinions and the ideas of the others and try to come to some sort of majority if that's necessary, to make it, or just to hear what other people have to, ask and say. And then the other question comes down to fidelity. If we make this rule, we make this decree, how many are going to follow it to fidelity or are just going to scoff at it? We've seen it in our political landscape for the last, 10 years. People don't necessarily, well, that's not my president, right? And so we have to understand, will it be followed through with? we follow that up. Yeah, how does it impact the future? How does it impact the next generation? How does it make sure that the students most affected, most impacted are centered throughout the next, the duration of this? Putting a levy out there that they're borrowing money from the future. Is that the right decision? Knee jerk, of course not, but we have to look at the future plans. Do we want our students in decrepit buildings with technology that's too old to use? So these are things that, I do want to look at, the data and make sure that I'm making my informed opinion on that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, so we are going to go ahead and cover the topic that seems to be most on folks' minds right now. A broad sense of dissatisfaction is surfacing regarding the school district's handling of the inappropriate relationships between students and teachers. The most current article in the Beachcomber covers some of your positions on the recent events. Can you articulate a specific strategy that you would advocate for going forward to address the damage done and to prevent these situations in the future? And Martha, we'll start with you.
I think the number one thing, and I've been giving this a great deal of thought, the number one thing that a board can do, because the board's job is to be we're responsible for governing. We govern the superintendent, who's responsible to the principals and then the staff. And so we don't micromanage the classroom or what goes on day to day, but what we can do is to make the policies as pragmatic as possible. All the proper language is there. I looked it all up. There's a great deal of wonderful words in the handbook for the staff, even right down to sort of the perfect examples of what you should not do as a teacher. But what we have to do as a board is to clear as much bureaucracy away. And that's hard to do with a state that mandates a whole lot of things that I think are stupid, frankly. But to clear the bureaucracy as much as possible so that our principals can get into the classrooms instead of writing memos and having to satisfy some bureaucrat up top, so that we have transparency up and down the ladder. And what that means is ungunking the system of all the garbage that I am very familiar with as a teacher that has nothing to do with teaching, caring, or functioning as an intelligent human being. And I would dedicate myself to taking as much of a knife to red tape as I could.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we'll go to Angela.
Hi. So I believe that a policy is only as good as the enforcement of that policy. There are a number of policies at the district, and those policies must be both adhered to and, most importantly, enforced. In the situation that we're speaking to today of the violations of the boundaries policies, that those policies, as far as I'm aware of in the reading of at least one investigation, were violated. And it's not enough to simply try and stop behavior after it's known, but it is really important to ensure that everyone is aware of the enforcement of the policy and the consequences of violation of that policy. So it's not so simple in every single circumstance, but I think the first thing we can do is be really, really clear and consistent and apply the rules to everyone equally, consistently, equitably, and I think that what the school district can do, the school board, can do, is ensure that that the superintendent and the rest of the staff are aware of their policies, applying them consistently throughout the schools, and ensuring that should they be violated in the future, there is a very confident ability to do something about it and apply the appropriate consequences. That includes both regular reminders, but it also includes ensuring that staff feel supported in speaking up about violations, and that they have the tools and resources to both apply those policies and do their job. So if people are pretty understaffed, it's going to be really hard for them to also apply the policies that are necessary to keep everything moving through the district.
Thank you. Thank you. Gator.
Okay, so we are in the state of Mary Kay Letourneau, and people have seemed to have forgotten that. If I make it to the board, I think my first thing when we talk about how do we deal with this situation is we have to apologize. Like straight up, we have to tell the kids we're sorry. The school district didn't listen to you. Because I know kids reported things and nothing. What are we telling our kids? Look, you can tell us everything. Tell us everything. We're not going to do anything about it, but please tell us. So to me, there's that we need to say we're sorry. We need to come out with a statement saying we denounce grooming. We denounce this kind of activity, this behavior. And we need to let it be known, you're right, to the teachers that we need the kids to know they're in a safe place. More so than the teachers being punished, we need the kids to know they're in a safe place. And that's incredibly important for these children and these students to know that we care enough to do something, because it was reported a lot. The other thing is we need to set forth policies and, look at what we can do. Because I was told at the meeting we could only affect the budget, or okay the budget and pick a new superintendent, which I now know is not correct. I don't appreciate that I was lied to like that. But we need to make sure that we can guide policy and create policy that lets us say, we are going to make it safer. Not just for the kids in the schools, but for the community as a whole. I'm not saying pitchforks, because that's not the answer. Vigilantism is not the answer. But we need the kids to know they're safe. And that's my job as a parent, as a person in this community. And as a board member, I would make sure the youth know that they have an ally and they have an advocate and they have a bat to swing when they need to. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And River, we'll go to you.
I would agree with what Gator said in terms of students knowing that they're safe. I thought it was incredibly telling that when potential candidates met with the current board, I asked the students what their top issue was, their top concern, their top priority, and they said safety, and I asked them to expand upon that, and they talked about the cases that you're referring to, and they extended it beyond that into bullying, into gun violence, into a number of other areas. But that sense of psychological and physical and sexual safety on campus is critical. One of the aspects for me in addressing this is realizing that we're part of a national conversation. And yes, there are policies currently in place, but I don't think that we need to be passively bound by those policies. I think that we need to be a leader in shaping those policies and a leader in shaping the national conversation. At the college where I worked, I rewrote the sexual assault policy, the harassment and abuse policies, looking at those so that those policies do, in fact, serve our educators and our students. Because I do see limitations in the ways the policies are written at this point in time. I also believe that we need to do an incredibly careful review of what transpired, and an analysis of that, and coming from that, what our takeaways are, and that we are, yes, communicating those takeaways to the community. Here's what we learned through that process. Here's what won't happen in the future, and here's how we hope to shape the policies, practices, not only here, but moving forward, because we need to make sure that that safety is a part of the reality for our students and families here and our educators here, but also students across the country, because again, students across the country are feeling in very similar ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. And sort of, whoops, sorry, there we go.
Time's up.
My time is up. No, and I apologize. I definitely am having a brain lapse. We got everyone on that question, right? Yes, we did. All right, I thought so. And so I want to follow up with that question and kind of stay in this zone of talking about to policy and the role of the board. So a strong working relationship is required between the board and the superintendent, but at the end of the day, the board manages the superintendent. Describe your management style with employees and how you negotiate disagreements with employees and coworkers. And we will go ahead and start with Gator.
Okay, absolute authoritarianism. No, trying to add a little levity here. Sorry. So I don't want to get myself in a lot of trouble here. If there's a new superintendent in the next 5 years, I'm not going to be sad about that. I think there are some things that we need, as a board, would need to remind the superintendent that there can't be unilateral decisions without public input. And yeah, I just want, that's a tough one because I don't want to say I'm going to call for a vote of no confidence, but that might be my thing number one because of everything that's happened in the last 3 years. That's why there's so many people running for the board. We're very dissatisfied with the school district. And so for me, it's that, how do we make it right? And we need to help shape how the superintendent performs. And we need to ask those questions outright, and we need to be able to push back. We need to be able to say, no, that's not okay. And we need to say, this is the direction we'd like to go. And if that's not the direction you want to go, then we have to consider a replacement.
Okay. All right. Question would go over to Angela. Describe your management style with employees and how you negotiate disagreements with employees and coworkers.
So in my professional world, in the field that I work in, I am a manager. I manage a team of 15 professionals, and all of those on my team spend most of our days advising high-level managers across a workforce of 15,000 employees at the county. So I've encountered more, I've encountered a number of challenges and issues, anywhere from the most unique and challenging issues to your regular disputes between various employees or just performance issues. And I think ultimately my advice to those that I work with, my management style, as well as the advice that I give those who are handling some of the toughest situations, is to both listen carefully to why these issues are arising, really look at patterns, understand the impetus for the problem, and then I think asking some of the hard, uncomfortable questions that a lot of times people are afraid of and kind of shy away from. I've learned that just to be bold and go for it and ask those hard questions, in the long run, it's like pulling the necessary, and I'm excited to get started on them. And then that when you get over on the other side, you can start working together and establishing those relationships.
Absolutely. And Martha, collaboration with leadership in hand with management of our leadership.
Well, I'm really impressed with what Angela said and what she's done in her job. I can definitely say that as a teacher, my job as a teacher was much more collaborative than it was leadership. My job as a negotiator was much more decision-driven. That was two different hats. I think a board has to respect each other. I've seen boards that are at each other's throats, and that affects everyone in the district that's working there. They're spending so much time on theoretical arguments or personal vendettas that nothing gets done. But I am so encouraged by the fact that everyone who is running here is running from a space of integrity and change. And so I would look forward to and assume that I would be coming into a board that was collaborative and would listen carefully to each other and to other people's concerns. I think it is absolutely critical to be tolerant of differences. And I've always said in liberal Vashon, if you are not tolerant of the other side, then you aren't walking the walk. So you have to listen really carefully to what people are upset about, why they're upset about it. Is it something we can actually do about it? And if we can't, are we clearly communicating why we can't? That, maybe this is a problem that is insoluble because of something that's happened in state funding? Or is it something that we can actually solve through something creative that we haven't thought of before?
Absolutely. Thank you. And River.
Thank you. There is a few different things that I would say. One is a leader who I very much respected talked about the fact that if people are coming to you upset, angry, frustrated, et cetera, the one thing you need to keep in mind is that it's because they care about something very deeply. And if you lose sight of that, then you really lose your ability to work with that individual and with constituents. I think listening is critical. I think one of the other aspects that's critical in terms of management is understanding that every individual brings a particular expertise, a particular critical lens to the table, and that I have something to learn from them, from the students, from the parents, from the teachers, from the staff, from the administrators. And if I lose sight of the fact that I have something to learn, I also think that I'm failing in that management. I think there has to be listening, trust. I think that people need to have a trust with their board. I think that the leadership needs to be courageous. I also think that there needs to be a dialogue, and one of the other aspects that would shape the management style for me comes from work in community-based media and working with different indigenous populations in Mexico, where they have more of a participatory democracy. And in that, you really are charged with listening deeply and carefully. And yes, you have to get to a place where you make a decision. But from the management side, working with different constituencies, that listening has got to be core. I think here it also needs to be coupled with the willingness to make a difficult decision, and that someone comes to those decisions with clarity because of the work that they have done in their particular management style and the way that they arrive at that moment. I guess I would stop there.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Describe your experience advocating for marginalized communities, particularly as it might relate to the Latinx population on Vashon. What is a specific strategy you'd bring forward to improve Vashon School District services supporting Latinx students? And we will go ahead and start with Angela.
In my professional experience, in my job, I am tasked with ensuring that when we're applying policies both for employees of the county, but also applying services to our community, that the decisions we make are rooted in our ESG goals, and that we are ensuring thoughtful and equitable services for the entire King County community, and that includes on Vashon. So I do think that it's really important to just always have that lens when you're making decisions. It's very easy to get rooted in the habits of your general decision making. What's the best decision right now? But in the moment, you sometimes have to step back and think, in the decisions that we make, have we always been making the same decisions that apply to people differently? And those decisions are not necessarily always coming forward the loudest to the table. So one of the ways that I would apply that here in our community at this school board is to ensure that there is more of a open gathering of input on the policies and the decisions and the and the direction that the school district is going. Input, not just physically at the board, but input throughout the community going forward and finding the Latinx communities that need to weigh in, ensuring that we're having that voice at the table.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we'll go to Gator.
Okay, so I have two stories, but I will start by saying I was part of the City of Tacoma Environmental Services DEI committee, where we started to take a equity toolkit and create policy throughout the city, starting at the environmental services level, and then hopefully it spreads, which it's still working on, which included audits of our lessons, our art lessons for students to make sure that the young artists could access the tools and the language. So story number one, if you all remember Snowmageddon a couple years ago, my wife worked at the food bank, and the food bank wasn't going to be able to open because of the snow. And so her plan was to get a truck just down here at the church, not this one, the next one down, in the parking lot and distribute food. And so we're going to put an announcement on the VOV and tell people that it's available. And my first thought was, can you get it in Spanish, please? And we found she knew someone who could actually go out and could look at our copy and translate it for us, and had a commercial or an ad made that ran so that the Spanish-speaking community could hear that there's food available. She also made sure she called friends that she knew who could communicate with different groups to make sure they knew there was food available. But that wasn't the first thought for the food bank, not my wife, but the food bank itself was like, we just got to get, whatever, put an ad on VOV, but we have to think bilingual at the very least. The second one, I was working at Chautauqua, and I was given this big stack of stuff to distribute to kids, so let's waste some more paper and tell, things. But one of the forms was from one of the groups, I don't remember which one, but it was only in English, and it was only on one side of the paper. So as an environmentalist, I'm like, could we put the Spanish on the other side? So I contacted the person who created the flyer, the organization, and they said, look, I'm too busy to do this. I shouldn't be asked to put it in Spanish. And I was like, but that's your job. This is yeah. So anyway, I got dragged to the principal's office and got in trouble for it because I was offending the person for asking for it in Spanish. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And we'll go to Martha.
The first thing I do is talk to Nidia Sagun, who is our liaison. Secondly, this has been an issue I've been concerned about ever since I've taught. I have often used my own poor Spanish when I didn't have a translator. And I have always been very, very concerned, because we are so constrained with resources, that when ELL first started happening in the district, it was, I don't know how bad it is now, but it was a horror show. And it was partly because of the funding, but also because of, at that point, the sort of lack of recognition of our Latinx community. They are very dear and near to my heart. And I was at the food bank at that truck with Snowmageddon, and I had the privilege as a food bank volunteer for the last 5 years or so of working with your wife. And I always appreciated that. And I always try to greet my friends in the Latinx community and our clients in as bad Spanish as I can, because we all have to try to communicate with everybody and treat each other as see each other, even if we can't speak as well as I would like to. I would say lo siento to all my Spanish-speaking friends out there that, yeah, you're seen, you're heard, and we care about you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And River.
I guess one of the things I would want to say really clearly is that working with different underrepresented or marginalized communities has always been core to my work in every aspect, whether that's working with queer communities, women, foster care youth, but a lens of equity, access, and inclusion has always been there. In terms of, in particular, you're asking about the Latinx community here, I think that there are a number of aspects that are critical for us to consider. That one, we have one translator serving this community in our schools, and I have watched youth and families therefore feel greatly disenfranchised by the absence of access to someone because we are cutting people out of the conversation. And so to me, that's something we need to address. One of the aspects as we consider supporting communities is realizing that we are benefiting, right? That this is not just what we do and who we are serving or reaching, but we as an asset that looking at language and culture in our schools is critical right now, that the youth who are coming out of these schools are in a global context. If the pandemic didn't teach us that, right? I don't know what will, but we have got to realize that we're in a global context, that working and increasing our relationship to language and culture in the schools has got to be forefront for all of our youth and families. And I watch the benefit of that for my son, who is at Chautauqua in the elementary school, for his friends. I watch the disenfranchisement of the Latinx community, and that has to do with language and translation. It has to do with resources here, economic resources that creates stress. I think that we can do things like an endowed position, that we could do a capital campaign to have endowed positions that are budget relieving, right? And so that we also make that commitment core to our structure and our foundation as we move forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we are going to move into lightning rounds here as we close in on our hour. And so the next couple questions, I'm going to do one more question with a minute to answer, and then we'll do 1 minute closing statements. So 1 minute, a lot of focus has been given to recent events, right? To the events of the past year. And when that much focus is pulled, some things can get lost, right? So what's a specific issue that you feel has been lost or overlooked in the past couple years with the school district? And River, we'll start with you.
I think that there are a few, but one that you said that hasn't been part of this conversation is the fact that the pandemic created an enormous stress for everyone, and that we are seeing the effects on our students. And we're no longer in a crisis mode, and we have got to be responding to the needs that have been generated by that. And we can do so creatively. One of the things that I'm hearing again and again is what we can't offer based on those increased needs in terms of stresses on reading skills. I see teachers stressed in the classroom with the number of students who need extra support coming out of the pandemic. There are so many areas there. There are places around the country that are proactively doing things to utilize the resources that are available to 2024 to integrate reading support into camps in creative ways and other things like that. I'm watching some of our best teachers leave this year, and that breaks my heart. And part of the reason I see that happening is because of the educational stressors that are there and the absence of support.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Angela.
I was inspired to run for school board before the recent events that we've been talking about, and based on a couple of other circumstances where I felt some issues were getting lost. And I think that's open and transparent management, and including negotiation with the employees at the school district, being really working collaboratively and working honestly and with what are the tools that we have, how do we disperse them equitably, and how do we ensure we are funding all the resources that the teachers need. So ultimately, the budget is nothing more than something we balance and show priority over. Do we show priority in the teachers? We should. Should we also show priority in the work that they're doing, not just the paycheck that they're receiving? I think we should. We should involve them in our decisions in our budget making.
Absolutely. Thank you. Martha?
As a teacher, frankly, my friends have been asking me to run for the board since I retired. And I knew it would be a great deal of work. And I care absolutely passionately about the teachers that I have worked with forever, and the new ones coming up, and the profession itself. And that is, that is the core. Education is the core of our society. We've had such good schools here on this island. I don't want us to go backwards. And that's why I threw my 2 cents in the ring here. I think the priority, we have to understand exactly why we're making the decisions we make. It's very hard, the way things are set up, to do it rationally, but we definitely have to listen to staff.
Great. Thanks so much. And Gator.
Okay, so representation in our educators is something that is blatantly ignored on this island, and it's horrible. If you look at the makeup of the skin tones of the teachers, you won't find too many that have as much melanin as I do, and that is an issue. But it comes to, at what cost are we paying our educators? Can people afford to live here? These are issues that school board can address, at least bring up to the table. Language programs. My stepson had to take Japanese online from BYU of all places. And there should be more language programs, more art programs, those kind of things. I think it's time to update some of the classes and the educators.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right. And we are going to move to super lightning round. And we're going to have short closing statements, and let's say up to 1 minute on your closing statement. And we'll just reverse our initial order and start with Angela.
Can you clarify what the question is? We're just closing.
Yeah,
statement.
just a closing sort of anything we might have missed.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to this, and ultimately for your engagement in the process. And when you go to fill out your ballot, if you're wondering what should my vote represent, if you're looking for somebody to be on that board, asking the right questions, having thoughtful conversations, critical discussions, not shying away from a little bit of conflict, but in a thoughtful and respectful manner, and ultimately coming down to the most thoughtful and responsible decision on behalf of the community, in a way that you can see that discussion happening, and in a way that you can understand how we got there. I am one of those people that can bring that to the table when you make that vote.
Excellent. Thank you. River.
Yeah, I thought that was beautifully said. I guess a couple of different things. One, I just want to acknowledge that it's not possible to have addressed everything we need to address here. And so I appreciated the question before, but there's so many things, parents with IEPs, with children, there are so many areas that we need to be having conversations. I guess what I would say, as someone who's been in the field of education for as long as I have, as a parent who is deeply committed to not just my child, but all children here on the island thriving, as someone who will listen, who will go out into the community, who cares very much to be a part of the community and to make sure that the decisions being made are reflections of the community interests, that I bring that to the table, that I will work strategically, creatively, and with vision, so that we don't see current problems solely within the lens that we are currently provided, but that we can be creative, we can be visionary, and that we can be leaders in the field of education across the country.
Thank you. Martha?
As somebody who spent my entire life working for island education and seeing things on the ground, I think I bring a real pragmatism to this. Too often what happens is the top spends a lot of time on mission statements and a lot of time debating theoreticals or looking at spreadsheets and data, and not enough time talking to our custodians, the grounds people, the student council, the lunch ladies, everybody that is impacted by the decisions at the top. I want the ground up, not the top down. And I want a board that is governing, not governed.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Gator.
So my statement is always make sure our children, our teachers, and staff are safe. They live in a world of equity, and they are, included and feel like they belong. I think that's something moving here to the island. Not everybody feels like they belong for a long time. People like to ask me, well, how long have you been here? We all belong here. We live here, we work here, we play here, we go to school here. I want the students to know that sitting on the board will be someone who advocates for them. I want the teachers to know there's someone who's going to make sure that their job might be a little easier tomorrow. And I want the community to know that I'm going to push back against the Christian nationalism. If it shows up, the book bans, I want to push back against that stuff because it's happening everywhere and it shouldn't happen here. But when it does, I want to be the one in the room to say no.
All right. Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end. On behalf of the Vashon Maury Community Council and Voice of Vashon 1019 KVSH, I want to thank everyone here in the room. I want to thank everyone involved in education. Truly one of our most important and thankless communities out there, right? Jobs out there is education. So thank you so much. Community engagement brings hope and strength, and seeing everyone engaged brings that to our community. So thank you so much, and the beginning of a long conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Remember to vote.
Thank you very much. This is 101.9 FM KVSH LP. You should be able to see this on the internet at www